So with Jon Jones putting off retirement and there is a next fight in his future, he then says that he doesn't want to fight a dangerous up-and-coming fighter that is Tom Aspinall. He'd rather fight a dangerous established fighter that would be Pereira, right? And those two options, or anybody else who is out there, for you, who do you want to see Jon Jones fight next?
I want to see, I think the most dangerous is Tom Aspinall, because as much as Pereira has got knockout power, the average fight time for Tom Aspinall is 2 minutes because he gets it done. There's scary Russians that Tom has put away and you're like, okay, now you've got my interest piqued, you know? Look, Jay, I hear the Jon Jones argument because he says that he's fought 9 champions in his time at the UFC, and if he fights Pereira, he's the 10th champion on his resume. That for legacy makes sense. Versus Tom Aspinall, who is an interim champion, which doesn't count for much, right? So I think if he fights Pereira, you'll tick the box in terms of the legacy, in terms of the copyright. But in terms of the eye test and who we're clamoring for, I think it's Tom Aspinall, man. Because Tom Aspinall is young, he's hungry, he wants to prove a point. You know, he's been looking for the Jon Jones fight for the longest of time. And that's why the fact that when Jon Jones is active again, we say, fight that guy. He's been calling you out. He's been ready. He's been preparing for you this whole time. Whereas Pereira's just moved from middleweight to light heavyweight because he wants to crack at something else where he doesn't have to cut weight. I think for me, the one that makes sense, as Dana White has said, is that there is no Pereira fight. The guy who wins this fight fights Tom Aspinall. I have to say that is the ultimate test. The GOAT has to be tested against Tom Aspinall.
So Jon Jones said that in order to fight Tom Aspinall, he wants a few money, and I wondered that is that what he's doing in terms of avoiding the fight or ducking that Tom Aspinall talk because he is negotiating, right? And the two guys who are in the division, who it makes the most sense for them to go up against one another, is Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones. Although Jon Jones has been on the record as saying that he is willing to give up his belt for his next fight. He would be willing to do a BMF fight, right, against Pereira. But as you say, Dana White, I was like, nope, that is not going to happen. And then Tom Aspinall, interestingly, he said that, yeah, he saw Dana White look in his direction a few times and have some conversations, or they hinted towards him that is a fight that is likely to happen. So we may see. And, you know, with Dana White in the UFC and how it's set up and how he's operated over the years, we tend to see the fights we want to see, right? He tends to make those fights. So there is a very high chance that we see Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall in the not too distant future. But if you're asking me which fight I want to see, who do I want to see Jon Jones go up against next, it is Francis Ngannou. Like, I know, Chuck, that as we sit here, it's impossible because Ngannou's at PLF and Dana White doesn't want to do business with PLF. And I get it, right? PFL, excuse me. Because the other promotions aren't as big as the UFC. And Dana White thinks exactly like Jon Jones. This is why these two men love each other so much, because they're the same person. Jon Jones does not want anyone to build a legacy off of his name, and Dana White is the same. He does not want to cross-promote another promotion because they're going to be living off the limelight of the UFC. This is how I think Dana White thinks. But I don't know how. I don't really care how, if I'm being very honest. But Dana White and the PFL people need to find a way, because the fight that is out there since Jon Jones moved up to heavyweight, the one fight that is the heavyweight bout to end all heavyweight bouts is Jon Jones, the presumptive GOAT, against Francis Ngannou, you know, because we know what we have with Ngannou. Like, he is maybe the most dangerous man in the sport. And when last seen, still brilliant. And Jon Jones, we know now he's at heavyweight. We've seen him fight twice, and he's won both of his fights, but they're not really convincing. You know, like, okay, yes, he ended them very quickly against a fighter who's got a great legacy in Stipe, as well as Ngannou, who is a heavyweight who's built as a heavyweight we've never seen before in terms of how he moves and everything else that he's able to do. But neither one of these guys are Francis Ngannou in 2024 at this point in time. So again, I don't know how he makes it happen. I don't pretty care much what needs to be done, but whatever needs to be done, get they're done to get Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou in the ring. That's the fight I want to see Jon Jones partake in next.
Dana White's got beef with Ngannou still, so maybe that's another hurdle, you know. But I completely agree with you, Jay. If ever there were cross-promotion fights or bouts, Jon Jones versus Ngannou is number one, and then Jon Jones versus Aspinall is number two. And then if Jon Jones doesn't get his money, Tom Aspinall versus Ngannou will be exciting, right? So the one championship heavyweight champion, Rug, I think he won his belt a week or two ago. He's been calling out Ngannou because he knows that those companies, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, they do business together. And so there's money to be had. There's competitions to be had where the fans can get all they want. And, you know, to scratch that itch, because as you said, you still wonder, there's lingering questions because they had the conversation. There was that idea that if Jon Jones moves to heavyweight, Ngannou is there. But when Ngannou leaves and Jon goes to heavyweight, you're like, it can still happen, you know? So I'm with you, Jay. I think that's the number one fight if ever that's possible. But within the organization, it has to be Tom Aspinall.
And also, it's not likely because Ngannou has his money now, right? From his boxing matches.
Jay, the fight that he fought Ngannou was his first MMA fight in that organization.
Yes.
He's been boxing
since he left. So he doesn't need to fight for the money anymore. And that's the thing we say about fighters, right? Some guys really just love fighting.